Hey everybody, Rebecca here for a little bit different of a video today. I was inspired by a video that Rachel Hickey put out recently talking about limiting beliefs around money. I will link to that video in the description box down below. I really enjoyed it, and it honestly got the wheels turning in my own mind about the topic in general. And so I have had so many thoughts about sharing my own money adjacent limiting beliefs that I just had to go ahead and get a video out there on the topic. I am sure this video is going to be on the longer side. I am probably going to go on some tangents, but context will be necessary for this video because it really does kind of explain why I am the way I am. The reason I have this YouTube channel, why I am so interested in pursuing financial independence to retire early, to the point that it may or may not become unhealthy for me. And I think this is something that we all should consider for your own situation. If you're following me on the channel, then I am sure you're also interested in the FIRE movement. You may be pursuing it yourself. And I think that if you're going to pursue this lifestyle, that some self-reflection is necessary from time to time to make sure that you are pursuing it in a healthy way. That being said, we will be talking about some trauma in this video, so trigger warning there. And yeah, let's just get into it. And speaking of being healthy, we may need a few drinks. Get yourself some tea, some coffee, get cozy. Let's discuss. So, limiting beliefs around money. First, some context for you. If this happens to be your first video on my channel, if the YouTube algorithm has suggested this video for you and you're interested enough to click, thanks for being here and for watching. But talking about some of the toxicity that can happen in the FIRE movement, I think that I personally have experienced this, and I must give you guys some context first before we dive into the topic of limiting beliefs around money and toxic mindsets when it comes to the FIRE movement. So, for context, I am currently 37. I'm living in North Carolina. I'm recently married. My long-term FIRE goal is to be financially independent and retire early in Sweden. My husband is Swedish, and we're planning on firing there. He has already reached financial independence and retired early, so I'm basically playing a catch-up game. And in my mind, this can be a little bit of a challenge for me. I do have a big dog. Also context. I guess he's just gonna lay in the background there while we discuss all these topics. Anyhow, so yeah, the long-term goal for me for FIRE is to reach financial independence and retire early in Sweden. I do feel a little bit of pressure to do it as quickly as possible because my husband is older than me. He's already reached FIRE. But now I kind of mentally feel like that I am the one holding us both back because I have not yet reached that financial independence. And I am stuck here in North Carolina working my job until I'm able to save and invest enough to get there myself. So there is always this undercurrent of pressure that I put on myself to get to financial independence as quickly as possible. And that is something that is very easy to allow yourself to take that to a toxic level where you will be willing to work yourself to death to get to FIRE faster. You can cut your expenses to the bone to get to FIRE faster. You will obsess about the FIRE movement. It will become the only thing that you are concerned about watching on YouTube, reading about in news articles, listening to podcasts, all surrounding financial independence. And it's great if you're doing it from the healthy aspect of wanting to learn more and figuring out what's best for you. But it's so easy to cross that line and go into the obsessive mindset about it. And I have been there myself. If you've been with me for a while on the channel, then you know the topic that comes up a lot for me in my own life is balance around the FIRE movement. And I struggle with that all the time. And now that my FIRE plans have recently changed and I'm trying to reach financial independence and retire early in Sweden, and my husband is already FIRE, I just feel the pressure even more to get there faster. And it can be an unhealthy thing for sure. And I have to say 100% that this is all me that is putting this pressure on myself. My husband obviously is supportive for me to reach FIRE, but at the same time, he does not want me to kill myself to get there. But I put a lot of pressure on myself to get there. And that is why I made the thumbnail for this video the way that I did. I'm like, sometimes when I step back and look at myself in this situation, I ask myself, why am I like this? And I have done a lot of digging over the years as I have gotten older and learned more about myself and who I am and why I am the way I am and how this all ties into the FIRE movement and why I so easily hyperfixate on this in my life. And I'm thinking that some of the things that I discuss may relate to you as well. A couple years ago, maybe, I read a very interesting article that I will link to down in the description box below. The article was titled something like, "Hyper Independence. Is it a good thing or is it a trauma response?" And it was a very interesting article. I read the thing and I was like, oh my God, this is me. And maybe some of you can identify with it as well. So I'll link to it down in the description box below. And now that I have gotten older and I am able to look back on my life with a little bit of perspective, I can see how everything that has happened in my life so far all kind of relates to and ties into my desire for reaching financial independence and retiring early. So again, context, we're going to go way back to the beginning here and talk about my upbringing a little bit. I had a good childhood, I will say that, and nothing that I am going to say about how I was raised is me trying to say, oh, poor pitiful me, or woe is me in any way, shape, or form. I don't want you guys to think that. I honestly don't know that if I had the option to change my upbringing, that I would. I'm not going to say it was perfect, but I never wanted for anything, and compared to what some people go through, I had a great childhood. That being said, I was born and raised, my family is from a very rural area of southern Appalachia. So there wasn't a lot of affluence around when I was growing up. It's kind of one of those situations where like everybody is lower middle class or poor. Poverty was a thing in the area where I grew up, and but because nobody was really super wealthy, I think most of us kids growing up never really realized the struggle, you know? And that's a good thing. I was raised in a single parent household. My mom was trying to raise 3 kids on her own. My grandmother also was a single parent, and that was something that was not very common for the area that I grew up in, and especially for her generation, my grandmother's generation. So I came from a line here of strong, independent women, and they deeply instilled that independence in me, and I am so grateful for that. However, my own life experiences after leaving the nest has taken that independence, that strength, and turned it into a thing that can be and has at times been quite toxic in my life. I think there is such a thing as toxic independence, where you can take it to an extreme and you basically isolate yourself, whether you're consciously doing it or not. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. I think that my upbringing is probably the reason why the FIRE movement appealed to me so much when I discovered it. Not only my upbringing, but my early adult life out on my own. Everything kind of pointed to making the FIRE movement something that would definitely appeal to me, and personal finance in general. once I finally started learning how personal finance works, the floodgates were opened. I just went down deep in the rabbit hole. And again, that's a good thing because everybody should have some level of knowledge when it comes to personal finance. That way you can better your life situation no matter what situation you happen to be in. But early on in my adult life, when I graduated high school, I went to college, I earned a 2-year degree in veterinary technology, and I worked as a registered vet tech for a few years. And the relationship that I was in at that time was quite toxic. And the thing was, it was pretty insidious, and at the time I did not realize it was happening. But looking back now, there was a degree of financial abuse going on. And actually one instance of physical abuse, which ended up being the thing that got me out of that relationship, the push that I needed to just be brave and leave. But back then, in my younger years, I did not have the degree of financial knowledge that I have now. Being raised the way that I was in a single parent household and having a very independent mindset, I was at least smart enough to know that I did not ever want to mix financial accounts. I wanted to always be in control of my own money. But this relationship was the only one that I was ever in where I was not the person in the relationship who made the most money. And this is not something that I realized I was even doing after I got out of this relationship, but every relationship I had after that, I was the one who was the breadwinner, quote unquote. I made the most money. And I think that subconsciously somewhere in there was me feeling safer in a situation where I knew that I would never be in a position where an attempt could even be made to financially control me again. So that was a thing. But this relationship that I had, I always had control of my own money, but again, I did not make the most money in the relationship. So when it came to big financial decisions that we would make together, I got very little input and very little say in what was happening. And at the time, with me dealing with my level of personal finance knowledge where it was, I just thought it was normal that, oh, if you can't afford something, then you put it on a credit card, you rack up debt. It's okay as long as you can afford to make your payments. So this is kind of what led me to getting into such a negative net worth financial position before I started my YouTube channel. Again, when I discovered the first inklings of interest in personal finance and started learning about how things should work, I did better. I did better, y'all. But I got myself into a pretty big financial hole early on in my adult life. And when you start behind the 8 ball, it does make things exponentially harder to dig yourself out. But I'm happy to say that obviously I got out of that relationship. Honestly, student loans were a big thing that helped me leave that relationship. Me working as a veterinary technician, even though I had gone to school and I was registered, it was not a job that paid very well. And again, the degree of the financial hole that I was in, I knew that I would struggle to support myself on my vet tech income and try to put myself through college again to get a better paying job. I now work as an ultrasound technologist, and yeah, that's just what I've been doing for the last 10, 11 years now. But again, money was a big motivator for me changing careers. That drive to be more independent was a big motivator for me to change careers. I wanted to pick a career that would allow me to support myself, to not ever be in a position where I felt like I couldn't leave a relationship if I needed to. And this personal finance rabbit hole that I started going down was such a good thing for me in many ways, because it allowed me to realize some things about myself, to realize that I do have the control that I need to improve my life. I just need to make better choices. So yeah, that ended up with me going back to school, getting the degree I currently have. And, you know, now I obviously live quite happily by myself here in North Carolina. and I'm able to support myself and not only pay my bills, but maintain a pretty good savings rate every single month and work my way towards financial independence. But after leaving that relationship, I subconsciously, every relationship after that, including my previous marriage, was a relationship in which I was always the breadwinner and I was the one making financially responsible choices. I think that in my mind, buried down deep somewhere, was always this fear of being in that position again, and I did not ever want to go back to that. So I probably limited myself a lot when it came to the dating world and even getting married again. I kind of held myself back there. And now that I am married again, my current marriage, obviously, I guess you could say that I am still the breadwinner because my husband is technically unemployed, but he's already reached financial independence. So, and he is fully supportive of me pursuing this lifestyle because he gets it. He understands it firsthand. And if there is one small piece of advice that I could offer anyone watching this video, is that if you are unable to have these difficult financial conversations with your significant other, huge, huge red flag. Really take a step back and evaluate whether or not that relationship is healthy if you're not able to just have level-headed discussions about finances. And if you can't talk about finances, then talk about longer-term life goals together. Sometimes that is the necessary stepping stone in order to discuss the harder things like finance. Anyway, I digress from that. I told you guys that I would get distracted by tangents in this video, and I'm sure that won't be the last one. But back to younger Rebecca and my process of awakening around personal finance, the FIRE movement, and also realizing how I have taken the FIRE movement to an unhealthy level sometimes. So as I learned more about financial independence and retire early, I did all of the things. I listened to the podcast, I bought and read the books, I watched all the channels on YouTube, started my own channel after all. I did all the things. I joined Facebook groups, and one in particular Facebook group that I joined was a group that was geared towards women in the financial independence retire early movement. And y'all, I can say that probably about 90% of the posts in that group were from women who were dealing with a situation similar to the one that I was in before. They were either in a relationship, a marriage that was falling apart. They felt stuck because they were stay-at-home moms. They had been out of the workforce for years. They either did not have enough money in their own accounts, or they had no accounts in their own names. They had no assets in their own names. And they felt so stuck and trapped in a relationship that was falling apart, and they felt like they were going to either get nothing when the relationship ended, or they were not able to leave on their own because they had no skills, no assets, nothing. That was 90% of the posts that I was seeing in that financial independence group for women on Facebook. And it just made me so thankful to have the upbringing that I did. That I had this independence instilled so deeply into me to not ever allow myself to get into that position. And I had a close enough call in my early adulthood that I knew that I would never allow that to happen again. But on the other hand, seeing those posts day after day after day, I actually ended up having to leave that group on Facebook because it was mentally just sort of reinstilling this toxic independence mindset that I have, where not only do I have this need to become financially independent, but I also felt this need to not trust anyone. Don't ever be vulnerable. Never allow anyone to help you. Don't ask for help. Do everything yourself. That, I feel like, is crossing over into the line of a toxic mindset around the FIRE movement. And it is something that I can so easily slip into, that it just further isolates yourself. honestly, this period in my life of my early adulthood was probably this toxic thinking that I had around being financially independent was probably part of the reason why I made the decision to not have children. The posts that I was seeing in that Facebook group, for instance, so many of those women had children and they were either afraid to leave or the relationship was already falling apart and they had no idea what they were going to do. And I just never wanted to put myself in the position where even if a relationship fell apart, I would permanently be tied to someone because we had chosen to have kids together. And you could either look at that and be like, oh, well, that was a smart decision on your part. Obviously it was, because these previous relationships that I've had have not worked out. But on the other hand, you could look at it like, that's really sad because you have made such a huge life decision solely around the fact that you don't want to be controlled in any way, shape, or form. So this is what I mean by it is so easy to look at someone and think, oh, they're so independent. You know, you could admire someone's drive to be financially independent and their own human being. But that admirable trait, it's so easy to take it to a toxic level, in my opinion. I think that this drive that I have to maintain my independence and so easily taking it to a toxic level in my own life has really accentuated my own introvertedness to the point where I feel like I cannot ask for help. I don't like it when people do things for me. Y'all, if y'all have been following me for a while on the channel, then you know I have a super kind neighbor of mine that will sometimes cut my grass for me and do things around the house here for me without me asking him. But he's very kind and offers to do that, and I feel so guilty when he does it. I feel like I must be a bad neighbor because, oh, maybe I let my grass get a little bit too high, when the reality of the situation is he just likes to help. But even still, I can't let him just help me. I have to pay him for his services. I can't let him just do something nice for me. And you see how that is kind of a toxic way to look at things. This is why the concept of balance keeps coming up on my channel for me, because I struggle with it so much. I realize these things about myself now that I am older and I'm able to look back on my life and really see how the different life experiences that I have had have contributed to the way that I am today. But everything really is a balancing act. I have this drive to be financially free so that I can be in control of my own time. I don't even want to have a job tell me what I have to do, when I have to be at work, how I have to act when I'm at the job. I want to be so independent that I don't need to work a W-2 job anymore. And again, I think that's an admirable quality. But the devil is in the details. How are you going about your financial independence, retire early journey yourself? Are you at a healthy level mentally where you're pursuing financial independence, but you're not burning yourself out? That's a question that only you can answer. And honestly, when I look internally at myself and I ask myself those questions, sometimes I don't like the answer. Your girl is burnt out. I am burnt out like hell, but yet I keep grinding. I keep pushing. I take the overtime anytime I get the opportunity. I will keep working until I get to financial independence, or I will die trying, you guys. So is that a healthy thing? Is that a good thing? Or am I some degree of toxic when it comes to financial independence, retire early? Y'all be the judge. It is a very fine line to walk, and it's a difficult one to walk. And that is why I really enjoyed watching Rachel Hickey's video about limiting money beliefs, because honestly, this financial independence, retire early movement, when you let it take you to a toxic level like I have from time to time, it can become a very big limiting money belief You hold so tightly to every penny that you possibly can that you're hurting your quality of life right now. You may get to the point where you just don't trust the people around you, where you're saying no to life experiences now just in the name of trying to save a few dollars to get to financial independence a day faster. It's all such a difficult line to walk. It's a very difficult balancing act to figure out. And, all of us are different. So the point of this whole video really is to encourage all of you to do a little bit of self-reflection around this topic and see if you are in a good mental place in wherever you're at in your FIRE journey. Obviously, I am not perfect on this journey. I struggle with a lot of things mentally. I know that pursuing financial independence is not something that I will ever abandon. It's too important to me. It's too important to who I am as a person to be independent. And I think that in and of itself, taken at face value, is a healthy thing. The trouble is that someone with my mindset has a tendency to take it too far and make it to become an unhealthy, toxic thing. So this is something that I know that I will continue to struggle with, but I hope that it's not something that you're struggling with. I hope you have a whole lot healthier mindset when it comes around the FIRE movement yourself. But if this has maybe made you do a little bit of self-reflection, then doing this video was totally worth it. Because the video that Rachel put out, it really made me start thinking about this topic some more and taking a step back and kind of assessing where I am at in my own FIRE journey and realizing that there's a lot of financial trauma that I have worked through in my life, and it's still a work in progress. And I think that it always will be, but that's life. We all just do the best that we can with the hand that we were dealt. So if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I do appreciate you watching to the end. Let me know how you're doing in your FIRE journey in the comment section below. Are you okay? Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. And if you would like to follow me for the rest of this FIRE journey of my own, click subscribe down below, and I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye, y'all.